But, I don't know this stuff as fact, and people, will run with it, and it sounds very plausible to me, and it would fit in the road to rooter theory because it's all about deception. And, if they, you heard, Hank Paulson when we were going through the 2008 crash, he said, "We will do everything in our power to fix this." That, what does that mean? They will do everything. They will break the law. They will kill, steal, rob, you name it. And that's what they've been doing for, decades.
Thanks, Romans. The next section we'll be discussing is the corruption section. Romans, can you continue, please?
Yeah, Bix, can you please speculate on how you believe the precious metal market manipulations will end? Specifically, is there a specific event that you believe that would occur to cause the doors to be blown off the whole story?
I think it will end with the crash of everything. It might be the cause of the crash to initially start it. In 2008, I thought it was going to be silver that would be the key thing that was going to kill the banks when it started going over $21. But that didn't happen. The silver back when the first market crash was happening, the silver short position was held by Bear Stearns. And that was definitely a good guy attack on Bear Stearns, on the heart of the banking cabal, by going after their silver position. And the way they got out of that is, JP Morgan took it over, basically. So it might be another attack on silver. It might be an attack on JP Morgan. Or it might be revelations about the mortgage scandal. Any way you do it, if the gold and silver manipulation ends, so does everything else. The unbacked fiat money system would be destroyed. And the banks know this because, they're knee deep in it. That's why they control it. So, is it going to be the metals that destroy the banking system, or the banking system that destroys themselves? I don't know, but once one of them goes, you can pretty much, it'll be days before the rest of it goes.
Right. I agree with you. I think, there's so many catalysts that could be the tipping point to bring the whole house of cards down. I noticed you had an email that went out today where you mentioned this. Where do you think that Cliff High's quote unquote rich riot, will come into play?
It's interesting because I always love that part of Cliff's analysis, that there would be a rich riot at a bullion depository where the rich people would go and demand their metal, and it'd be known as a rich riot. But two things in the past week have happened that kind of might spark that. The first one was the Kitco problem that happened. I believe it was Friday. Was announced that they're having tax issue problems. They're under investigation. I hear there was a raid. Kitco is an interesting company because they have pooled metal accounts. Now, pooled metal accounts are basically pools of paper. They're supposed to have the real thing behind it, but they sell certificates based on their holding the metal for you. They charge almost nothing, so you can get your gold bullion supposedly for really cheap premiums. The business model is flawed because you don't pay anything for storage, you don't pay anything for insurance. It kind of comes to, okay, then how does Kitco make money if they're going to charge nothing to hold the metal for you? And what they do is they take that money and they invest it in, bonds or something that they get a rated return on. And because they think that there won't be it's kind of fractional reserve metal holding. Everybody won't cash in their certificates at the same time. Well, the problem now is that Kitco I don't know if they filed for bankruptcy. I know bankruptcy is in the discussion. But what is going to happen to all those people who have those Kitco certificates? Now, that might be kind of the start of the rich riots. People going to Kitco saying, hey, I want my metal, and they won't have it. The second thing was just announced today that in the UK, they are investigating JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs warehousing divisions. They talked about aluminum and things like that, but, the corruption in the warehouse, it might start with aluminum, but you'll very quickly get the gold and silver. And I do think this is part of the takedown. This could be the spark that starts the rich riots. Over in the UK, it makes sense that the rich riots would be in the UK because that's where theoretically the bulk of physical gold and silver trading happens. So I'd keep an eye on that announcement today that there's investigations into JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs for warehousing metal. JP Morgan actually, I think it was a few months ago, claimed they have this new thing called virtual warehousing of metal. And I'm like, why don't you just tell everybody there's no real metal in there? It's gotten ridiculous.
Right, I agree. Well, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
Actually, Bix, my personal favorite with Cliff's forecast was when China gets so upset with the US and US banking corporations, they actually ask some really high-ranking banking officials to come there, and they use a big sword on them. But anyway, that's me. The next question's for Diane B.
Hi, Bix. I have a question first from Odinson. And we're talking about Kitco not being able to front up with the silver, but as metals become more expensive, what are your techniques going to be for avoiding counterfeiting for metals in hand? And also, if an official conversion or return to a gold and silver standard occurs, what additional verification mechanisms will be available to people?
Excellent question. And, I have thought a lot about this. I have gone to smaller denominations of metals, sticking with 1 ounce coins and, smaller bars and things like that, on a personal level. What I really think is when the crash happens and we decide, oh my God, this unbacked fiat currency thing does not work, we have to go back to gold and silver, there will be a global remelt of all gold, silver, other metals, because there is a lot of fakes out there in the bars now, I believe. I think, SLV might have molybdenum in all those bars that they say they have. I don't know. But when people are buying, all it takes is a spark. And for people to doubt their metal, you're going to have to test that metal. There are ways to test it. I don't like the acid test because it only tests the outside of the metal. I don't like the ping test because, every size and shape of silver has a different ping sound to it. It gets harder and harder and harder. There's a metal analyzer gun that they have. It's very expensive. I've looked into that. It's like $20,000 or $30,000. And I think at some point the value of gold and silver will rise so much that when people buy coins, they're going to want to be absolutely positive that this coin is pure gold or pure silver. And I think the banks will, the banks that are left standing when we restart the financial system will have a way to test, the machines or the guns to test gold and silver for purity. And I think, at least in the U.S., and I think the U.S. Mint is kind of preparing for that now. The San Francisco Mint just had an $80 million supposedly historical refurb done to it, and now they're talking about coining silver dollars out of there, or the silver eagles. So I do think it will become an issue at some point, and once it does become an issue that is visible, everybody's going to question the purity of their own metal and other people's metal that they buy, so it might seriously affect price as well. Meaning that if you can prove that it's pure, it's going to be worth more, and if you can't, it'll be worth less.
True, and if the banks are going to need to know anyway, aren't they, if they're taking it in?
Now, exactly.
It seems that the global monetary meltdown is the only way out of this mess. and that it will be used as a or the creative destruction event. What do you think about this?
That is what is said in the Road to Rooter Teacher's Guide from the Federal Reserve Boston, is that in that comic, that's kind of the original, take on what is going to happen. They talk about returning to a gold and silver standard. But one of the things they talk about is that they talk about how after a while countries will start trading with each other. And that got me thinking of, okay, what does a global economic collapse mean, or a currency collapse mean? It will mean the end of globalization. And Alan Greenspan has talked about this since he left the Fed, that the end of globalization will be a shocking thing, because globalization wasn't always around. It's kicked in really since the 1980s. But we are such a globalized world now. The death of currencies would mean basically the United States betrayed everybody and killed their currency, which destroyed everybody's currency, and there'll be a lot of mistrust. But it'll be good for the U.S. because we'll bring all the manufacturing home. All our troops will come home because we can't afford to keep them. No one would want U.S. troops in their land anymore, and we'll kind of start fresh and reallocate money on a domestic basis at first. There will really be a time when we kind of stick to our own knitting. Every country will have to figure out their own way going forward.
That's great. That sort of answers my next question too, of what happens after the crash. Or do you have anything to add to that?
One thing in the Road to Rooter comic, in the Wishes and Rainbow comic, which is the first one, the way that Ruta allocates the currency, or they call them colored flowers, the way she allocates the currency is by age. And that got, analyzing that and going down the path of what Social Security has been like in the United States, Alan Greenspan was in charge of fixing Social Security in the early 1970s. And that's when I think he started the implementation of the computer programs. If you have a crashed U.S. dollar or all fiat money, you've got basically a wipeout of all debt and all assets of electronic or paper form. So you're going to have to reallocate money in some way, because we need money. You're going to have to reallocate money. Now, I'm just talking about the United States. And I think the way they plan to do it is through what you've already paid into Social Security. Because and that's why they have a cap on Social Security, and the rich don't have to pay that much, as a percentage of what they make, is that it'll reallocate money to the citizens of the United States based on what they've paid into the system already. And, you might think that Social Security payments are nothing, very small right now, a couple $100. But if a couple $100 is all the money that's out there, it'll be, worth a lot. Well, a couple $100 in gold and silver coin could be a whole different deal then.
So Diane, sorry to interrupt. Bix, just on Diane's question previously, how do you see the collapse occurring? I mean, do you see, obviously, treasury spreads increasing, and then maybe the just-in-time system starts collapsing, then the euro collapses?